Greetings. Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Beth Miller, one of the associate ministers here, and I welcome you to today's service. Our service leader today, our preacher, is the Reverend Doug Wadkins, our interim senior minister, and I'll be participating in the service as well. We're going to have a brief prelude in just a moment with some printed announcements. And while we're doing that, I invite you to get your chalice or your candle ready so that when we light the chalice a little bit later, you'll have yours ready to participate. We'll be back in just a few moments. Well, welcome again, everybody. That was beautiful prelude that we just heard. I especially want to welcome our visitors this morning, and if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to visit our website, where you'll see a banner, and if you click on that banner, it will take you to visitors' pages where there's lots of information about the church. And while you're there, please sign our virtual guest book to receive our weekly newsletter called Contact and our Zoom invitations. Despite not being together physically, there's a lot going on here virtually, and all are welcome. On our homepage, you'll also see a donation basket that looks like this. Whoops, wrong way. Please use the basket or mail a check to the church on the website. The address is on the website for this morning's collection. We appreciate the generosity of our members and friends, and thank you for keeping us solvent during these difficult times. And I want to remind you of coffee hour this morning. It's on the same Zoom idea as the forum was a little earlier this morning. And also, I want to invite you again to the open house, Beth's open house. It's actually a Zoom open house. I would love nothing more than to invite you to my home and offer you refreshments and chat with you there. But we're not doing that. We're doing it on Zoom. And you received the invitation in yesterday's email. If you didn't get it and you want to come, my email is on the website. You can shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. We have one special announcement this morning. We have a new opportunity for member artists to show your artwork. The Arts Council invites you church members and friends to be part of our next online members exhibit. The show will go up on our website in February. Please submit your work by February 5th. Further details are available in our newsletter, The Contact. Therein lies the end of our announcements for this morning.
We move now towards the lighting of the chalice, and I invite you to hear these words from Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address from 1865. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for those who shall have borne the battle, and for the widow and the orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. And now, we light this chalice in the spirit of the fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. I invite you to join us in our opening hymn, number 346. Come sing a song with me. We invite you now to a time of centering, and we will center in 3 ways this morning. We'll begin with centering in words, then move into a time of centering in quiet, and finally, we will join together in singing together, Spirit of Life. But first, we begin with our centering in words. This is taken from Barack Obama's first inauguration and his inaugural poet, Elizabeth Alexander, and her praise song for the day.
Praise song for the day. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, "Take out your pencils. Begin." We encounter each other in words, words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone and then others who said, "I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see."
Say it plain that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then keep clean and work inside of. Praise song for struggle, praise song for the day. Praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself, others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light.
Our reading this morning is from the Reverend Teresa I. Soto. Reverend Soto asks us, can we develop the skill of remembering the future? Can we commit to build the community that will extend into a time that we only know by memory because it will outlast us? Memorize the compass points of the day yet to come. The truth, the love, the fire, the endless yes of the horizon. Shake the scales from your imagination. Reach, stretch, rise. There is no more time for pretending that everything can be all right without your care, without your attention. And now, hear Hymn for America by our mini choir.
As we move into this week and prepare ourselves for the inauguration, and also on this weekend when we honor the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., there is so much on our minds, I imagine. I found myself reflecting on the last 3 inaugurations, which were very different emotional experiences. 2009 in particular was for me an incredibly exciting and in many ways celebratory experience, tinged with excitement, yes, but also anxiety about the undercurrents of racism that I knew were still so potent in our country. Right from the beginning, I was worried that there might be violence at the inauguration. And then in 2013, it was a more measured celebration. I had experienced the complexities and powerful limitations on a presidency, and I was more realistic about what is possible in Obama's work with our country. And then in 2017, it really was for me practically a day of deep anxiety and mourning. And I've rarely felt that sense of the inauguration could have been no less prescient than that feeling. So as we approach this inauguration, we are at yet another amazingly powerful crossroad in our history as a country. I am quite certain, in my lifetime at least, that there has never been such a historical moment of deep anxiety over what is happening in our country and in the world, intermingling so powerfully with the great expectation for change within our new leadership. Now, this is absolutely true and sincere, and yet, when I looked back at my notes at what I said about Obama's inauguration, I said sentences that were surprisingly similar. Perhaps it is the case more than we tend to remember how times of major change bring about trepidation as well as hope and expectation. There is so much that we don't know about the coming months. The continued impact of the pandemic, the tensions around the transition and beyond that likely will be significant. But we must also remember as we prepare to move in through the rest of this weekend and into the coming week that there are other things that are true. We know that the participation in this election was unprecedented. More Americans voted in the 2020 election, 2/3 of the voting eligible population, than in any other in 120 years. And records from 1980 on were surpassed in 42 states in the District of Columbia. And that was only because 1980 was the first time that all of that data was available to us. And we are aware of the significant differences that the votes of people of color and especially African American voters made in key areas, and that 52 to 55% of voting eligible young people ages 18 to 29 cast a ballot in 2020, also making a significant difference. All of those things remind us in this time that so much is true at once. And we know, many of us, that we do bring great expectation about what is possible with the Biden-Harris leadership before us. And I hope that we continue to remember and let our learnings inform us about how difficult it is for a new leadership team to bring about massive change quickly within our country. And we know that is likely to be very true in this instance. But we are not only a divided country, but even within those divisions are factions that go from deep antipathy to violence to folks who feel like voting for Trump is a place of great secrecy in their lives. And yet, we need to find a way forward. Inaugurations are indeed a time that call us to step back as well as to step into the here and now. And as I reflect on my approach to the Trump inauguration, while it was perfectly human, that sort of stepping away from it almost entirely with a sense of mourning and fear, I might have used my energy in a better way. And so I find myself wanting to remember and invite you to take a cue from the inauguration poets who have been a part of some of our inaugural experiences. There have not been many of them. Only 3 presidents, John F. Kennedy, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, have utilized poets in their inauguration. And Biden will continue that tradition with 22-year-old Amanda Gorman. And each of them had their own sort of distinctive mark and also a lot of common threads as well. From Elizabeth Alexander, born in 1962 in Harlem, New York, and growing up in Washington, D.C., in her poem, she writes, "Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm and take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. Or Richard Blanco, born in 1968 in Madrid, Spain, and growing up in Miami. Until Gorman, he was the youngest poet, Hispanic, openly gay, and he invoked imagery of the full span of the physical space of our country in its great beauty and its great diversity. But he concludes, all of us, as vital as the one light we move through, the same light on blackboards with lessons for the day, equations to solve, history to question, or atoms imagined, the I have a dream, we keep dreaming, or the impossible vocabulary of sorrow that won't explain the empty desk of 20 children marked absent today and forever. Many prayers, but one light, breathing color into stained glass windows. As mothers watch children slide into the day. And Maya Angelou, most famously perhaps, in Bill Clinton's inaugural poem, invokes even older images. A rock, a tree, a river, host to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur who left dried tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. Each of these poets does many things with their poetry and just with their very being. They remind us that many people in our country are not especially literate in contemporary poetry or contemporary poets. And so they offer us some of the range of voices, and there's often great intention that that be a diverse set of choices. It is important that we remember the variety of voices as we move into this time. But most of all, the poets ask us to step back and up and into larger ways of thinking about the coming days. Much as Teresa Soto said in her reading, as she invites us to think very carefully about how it is that we will encounter this time, in a way that asks us to really be aware of the power of the past, the way it may speak to us in the here and now. But there is so much more that this time asks of us, if we will let it. As we move into this time of Martin Luther King Jr., remembering his legacy, I'm very much reminded of the power of this convergence of time this year. So aware of the current intensity around race and the risk of especially Black Americans once again to engage in a political system that has rarely done right by them. I am reminded that that calls me not to squander this time in grounding myself in what is transcendently true about our country. The land itself, the people and all of their experiences, a sort of flow that is at the cornerstone, the foundation of this country, probably before we were the human beings who were here. And to let that deeper truth be part of what we understand, part of what we are called to think about in this time. To allow ourselves to join in that dream. Understanding that this enduring call to dream about what is possible in our country, what is possible for the individual, for communities, for neighborhoods, cities, the entire nation, that these were often invoked by people who were insistent that they had to struggle every day to participate with any sense of equality in our country. Their sense of dreaming wasn't a place of privilege, it was a place of survival. It is not escapism that calls us to use our imagination. It does not require us to set aside any of our experiences. We are invited to bring our fear if it is there, our sadness if it is there, our anger. For as the theologian Dante Stewart writes, our anger and our rage expand our imagination. He writes, "Black rage is in an anti-black world is a spiritual virtue. Rage shakes us out of our illusion that the world as it is what the holy wants. Rage forces us to deal with the gross system of inequality, exploitation, and disrespect." And he concludes that rage is the public cry for black dignity. It becomes the public expression of a theological truth that black lives matter to God. Now, that form of talking about it may feel very different than how we would talk about it, but our forebears as Unitarian Universalists were very much part of the ethos and the philosophy and theology of this country. The combination of Puritan, Pilgrim, and Quaker influences in early America were powerful in this sort of foundational thinking that established not only some of the highest ideals of this country, never perfectly realized to this day, but still powerful and meaningful, but they were also deeply a part of who we are. The first church in Plymouth, now a Unitarian Universalist congregation, but originally a Puritan congregation, has gathered for over 300 years, and it states in their opening words, "Every week, we pledge to walk together in the ways of truth and affection as best we know them now, or may learn them in the days to come, that we and our children may be fulfilled, and that we may speak to the world in words of action, of peace and goodwill." This calls us for a connection with our past as Unitarian Universalists that understands how it was core in our basic theology, this sense that each and every human being was created with some sort of holy worth. And what made it holy was that it was in accord with the very nature of the world itself, that all in which came into being, we understood as coming from a sacred spark that really was the foundation of our understanding of a country that worked towards the ideal of equality. As we move into this time, perhaps it has never been more important as to turn to Thomas Jefferson's ideals when he wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. That theological foundation is also a part of our own faith tradition, even as it continues to change over time, steeped in deeply held beliefs about the nature of things. And that nature calls us to continue to do the powerful work. I believe that this time calls us to not be mired in anxiety, but to look forward. When FDR quoted the now famous, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself," he was speaking of the anxiety of the state of the nation, and specifically one around economy and international unrest and violence. We could invest this time with great apprehension, fear, and protectiveness, but what if we also invested our hopes and our dreams in this time, took that risk to allow ourselves to think about what is possible, and most importantly, what it is that we are called to do. And on this weekend, when we honor Martin Luther King Jr., that we think about the legacy of being willing to risk so much for such a dream that speaks to us powerfully now. I cannot help but want to leave us with the thoughts of the vision of John F. Kennedy in his inaugural address. In many ways, he did not get the opportunity to fully realize his vision, but that original fire that illuminated his words still speaks to us. He begins by making a connection that is faith-filled in its understanding of the American vision. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is different now, but I believe still at issue around the globe are the rights of human beings, and that they come not from the state, but something larger. Throughout his speech, while clearly moving the vision, he repeatedly grounds his vision with many of these basic principles. Kennedy makes it clear that living out these higher ideals of basic human equality and truth that we hold self-evident are a requirement, not a luxury, if we are to remain true to who we are as Americans. As we reimagine America this weekend, especially after such a long time when so many possibilities of imagination have seemed constrained, may we dare to dream boldly. But dreams are even more powerful, I believe, in building a bridge from the past to the present and into the future. So much of our country's past ideals are part of the ideals that we can celebrate. May we embrace them in our dreaming. And as Kennedy does so eloquently towards the end of his address, to be aware of the many changes in our country, but mindful of the transcendently faithful consistencies that have carried us through decades of complexity. He concludes, since this country was founded, each generation of Americans has been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to service surround the globe. Now, the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though embattled we are, but a call to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation. A struggle against the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. His words speak so true to our hearts and minds now. As we reimagine and imagine America in the coming days, may it be so. I invite you to join in our closing hymn, hymn number 318, We Would Be One. As we prepare to end our service, I invite you to return to your candle or chalice, and as I extinguish the flame here, may you do so at home as well. We have reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory and for the letting of the imagination play with future possibilities. Shall it be concluded then? Or will this adventure now commenced continue? Is this ending to be an ending, or merely prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? We may extinguish this chalice, but not the light of deeper and older wisdom, not the fire of our commitment to what matters most in our lives, not the warmth of human connection and love. These remain until we gather in this place again.